importing and exporting MIDI, you're going to find yourself going between multiple different DAWs. For example, you might want to go into Ableton Live in order to use their instruments, or go into Logic and so forth. So one of the easiest ways is, of course, creating a standard MIDI file out of your tracks within Pro Tools. Now remember, MIDI files are stored within your .ptf session file. This was learned from our first week of material. So in order to get the MIDI data out of our session file, go into a track and do an export. And this is where we can export it as a MIDI file. And notice you have the choice of doing a type 1 or a type 0. Remember what a type 0 is. All information is contained within one track, and this is used for multimedia applications, for web design and so forth. But if you are going to other DAW applications, you want to keep your MIDI separated into multi-tracks. Now you can also apply your real-time properties that were maybe set in your session. Again, real-time properties are only plugin settings that happen in real time, so in order to have them written in the file, you must have them applied. Once this is set, you can hit OK, and you can choose where you want the MIDI file to be exported. Now I can also export from the File menu and choose several different things. I can export as a MIDI from here, but what's different here is that I have the ability to export the entire session, all of the MIDI tracks out as a standard MIDI file, not just the Rhodes track that I did before. If I go underneath the File menu and I choose Export, and I want to send it to Sibelius, we need to make sure that Sibelius is running. So we do have Sibelius running in the background right now. But in order for Pro Tools to actually see it as something to export to, you have to pull it up within your score editor. So if you go underneath the Windows menu and you pull up Score Editor, you can see that this shows your Rhodes track, and now I can go underneath the File menu and do Export and send it out to Sibelius. Now I actually recommend all of you that are taking the music production degree right now to actually take advantage of Sibelius. You can learn a lot about the score editor within your book, but I find it's actually going to be much better if you guys learn to work with it inside Sibelius, since it is more of an industry standard. So once this is active, let's go ahead and send this out to Sibelius. And we're just going to send it out to the desktop. And I'm going to just call this Rhodes. And if I go into my Sibelius and I do Command O to open up a session, I'm going to open up the Rhodes. And you can just simply ignore these settings right now, hit OK. And now you've got your Rhodes MIDI file all lined up within your Sibelius score so that you can start working with it. So at this point, we've only talked about exporting out of a track, or exporting out of your entire session, or sending your MIDI data out to Sibelius. But what about importing? If you go underneath the File menu, you can go into Import and choose Import MIDI. And this allows you to find material. So in this case, I'm going to go to my desktop. I'm going to go in here, pull up this MIDI file, and we get a dialog box that asks me whether we want to pull this into the regions list or into new tracks. If we do to new tracks, notice that we have the ability to import the tempo from the MIDI file, or import the key signatures as well from the MIDI file. Now this is something you have to be very careful. If you do import your tempos and your key signatures and you have pre-existing material in your session, you may be changing their tempos and their key signatures as well, which may be a good thing or a bad thing. You just need to make sure you make that decision before you import. Now we can choose to have the location be at a selection, or we can spot the material. So let's just do the session start for right now. And I'm going to import the tempo and the key because I do not have any pre-existing information. So notice how it pulled up all my tracks. Tracks have been labeled with the actual names, and they do show up in the regions list. Now right now they are gray simply because they have not been assigned to any instruments or outboard external devices. So if I go into my IOs and I was going to assign these out to a device, for example, then you can see it does turn color, and now we'll play the information out properly. So hopefully this explains all the different techniques of importing and exporting MIDI data out of Pro Tools.